Hello and welcome back to this second half of day one of the Lean HE Global Conference 2021. I hope you had fun during the break, meeting and chatting with other delegates, finding a little bit more out about the other sessions on offer, hearing some of the TED-style talks that are available, and also relaxing in the Wellbeing Hub. Now, for those of you joining for the first time now, my name is Dr. Vanessa Collingridge, just call me Ness, and it's my very great pleasure to be your conference host here at the Strathclyde University in Glasgow. And it's a double pleasure, really, to welcome back the fabulous Dr. Ruth Archer for this second plenary session. As we heard earlier, Ruth is Director of Continuous Improvement at Michigan Technological University, where she's responsible for training people on lean thinking and integrating continuous improvement into the day-to-day activities of students, faculty, and staff. She also teaches courses on lean principles, teamwork, and communication. A former engineer and designer in the US Air Force, amongst many other roles, Ruth is currently the chairperson for the Americas division of the Lean Higher Education Global Steering Committee. And now here she is with her talk on sticky learning, improving learning transfer from your lean training knowing to the workplace doing. Don't forget to post any questions or comments in the discussion forum during the talk. You'll find that at the bottom of your screen. But for now, Ruth, over to you.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. I am very excited to be able to share my learning about learning with you today. In this session, we're going to look at some best practices for learning transfer, trying to keep it really practical, things that you can take home and apply right away. Also give you opportunities to discuss with others, to share ideas and come up with some experiments. And finally, design a plan that you can start maybe using some of these tools that you're taking away from this workshop and apply it to all of the wonderful new ideas that you're going to be learning during the conference. And how can you take this knowing and make it into doing right away? Just to quickly show you some sources that I've found, that sort of a curated list of things that I recommend. I'm going to show you flash a couple of book titles up, but there are also a list of these sources at the end of my presentation. So first off is Learning Science. There we go. Learning Science for Instructional Design. So highly recommend this book. It just came out this year. Also, Design Thinking for Training and Development. So brings together a lot of the elements that we're very familiar with in continuous improvement and design thinking into the training and development culture. And then also Kirkpatrick's 4 Levels of Evaluation. So an important book for understanding how to measure the results of your program. So this is a slide about the university that I work for. Michigan Technological University is in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in the United States. And just a brief slide, if it comes up there, I'm just showing a little bit of my biographical information and some of my beloved dogs and children. So I have 3 dogs and 3 cats. It keeps me very, very busy. So what is this learning transfer that I'm talking about? It is a science there, but there's also a lot of art involved in it, and it's taking what you already know about training and the learner and expanding on that and creating a journey for them from knowing in the training room to actually doing on the job. So we used to think of training as an event. So, and many of us still do. Like, oh, I need some training, then I go to training, and then after that, this is done, I've been trained. So what we're discovering though is that what happens to the learner before they get to the training and what happens after the learner leaves the training, affects the aim of the system, which is a learning experience journey that gets results for the organization. So this learning experience journey, you can see, is very nonlinear now. It's a mosaic of elements that means to us that getting impact from training is the responsibility of the whole organization, but it has to be led by your learning function. And by learning function, so for in my case, is me. So not only do I do continuous improvement for the university, but also I provide training and I develop training, and I want the training that I have provided to people to have an impact on the organization. And so I have been learning and incorporating these skills into the work that I do. So, an important thing to remember when what's the important thing to remember is how people forget. And so this is what they call a typical learning and forgetting curve. And we're going to come back to this a couple of times as we talk about different techniques. And so I want to kind of explain it so that you'll be able to, in your mind's eye, see the differences as we go through. So in a typical learning session where you have 4 straight hours or 8 straight hours of learning, the learning curve is very steep at first and then kind of levels off. And then the minute the training ends, there's a dramatic drop. And then over time, within a few days, you're down to 20% of retention on what you learned. And over time, you're below 10% on retention. So, another way of looking at this is that the things that we do before, during, and after the learning event then can alter this forgetting curve. We want to make changes to it so that people don't forget as much and they don't forget it as fast. So the old way of looking at it was to have a learning event, and nothing was really expected beforehand and nothing really was expected afterwards. This typical well-run training event that you thought was fabulous on its own will result in about a 15 to 20% on the job application. So that is pretty dismal as far as effectiveness. So what we want to do is start bringing in new ways of thinking so that we have what can we do before the training and what can we do after the training. We don't have to come up with a full-blown program for training and development overnight. We can start adding elements, and then once we get that element perfected, then we add another element. And so then over time, we actually have a significant amount of pre-training prep that we've developed. We have spaced learning over time, and then we create a post-training support package for our learners. So this is kind of a laundry list, I understand, but I'm just going to talk about briefly about the kinds of things that you can do before the learning event. So first off, you need to do a training needs analysis. So when you talk about a training needs analysis, in lean lingo, this is going to the Gemba, so the place where the work is being done, trying to define the problems that are being had by the managers and supervisors out there and do a root cause analysis. This will help you target your training. So I know that you're probably providing really generic training that you want your people to take back and apply in their individual circumstances. But going to the Gemba is going to help you because it'll help you develop examples of ways that they can apply it, so that you have to provide that support for them so that they can see how to take what they're learning in the classroom and apply it. Also, ahead of time, work with the managers to develop a post-training support package. So this is where you talk to them about what kinds of practice time you might need, what kind of support that you want to provide afterwards, and also how you can hold the learner accountable for practicing. So there's a lot of different ways that this post-training support can work out. There can be surveys or observation, work reviews, coaching. You can provide coaching or feedback. So at Michigan Tech, we started with our initial plan for post-training support was hope. Like we would say, and we would hope that the person was going to talk to their supervisor and hope that the supervisor would provide release time to work on these things. Um, we moved from that to a supervisor approval letter where we talked in the letter about what kinds of release time the somebody doing improvement work might need, and encourage the supervisor and employee to have a conversation, and then the supervisor signed the letter approving this so that they were recognizing that release time was going to be a need. And then finally we've moved into more of a certification program for our yellow, green, and black belts, and that includes coaches and performance reflections and explanations of how they've moved through the Plan, Do, Check, Act process. In addition, you need to have a plan for after training evaluation. I have another slide on that in a moment, and use proven instructional design methods. And I also have a slide on that. We'll get to that. Make sure that you meet face to face or virtually the learners before the training. So this can help build their motivation, connect them to the professional development opportunity they'll be receiving and why that's important. And also how what they're going to learn is relevant to their business unit goals and the university's goals. And then consider providing a pre-learning assignment. So, for example, before I start our lean systems training, when I on the first day of the training, I really start by stressing culture. And so before that first day, I provide them with a video and an article. The video is called Greatness by David Marquette, and it talks about the very unusual kind of culture that this person developed. So it gets you thinking that there are options, there's different ways of experiencing culture at work. And then an article called Motivating People Starts with Having the Right Attitude, which is about the supervisor's attitude toward people that will help their people be motivated. So the examples of pre-learning assignments, and then when they first come in the room, within a short period of time, you have them meeting each other and then discussing this shared experience that they had prior to the learning. Let's see, I'll try that again. Okay, so this slide talks a little bit about training evaluation. We have to begin with the end in mind. You need to talk with stakeholders about what the training is, what they expect the training to contribute to the business results, or what leading indicators they think it will positively influence. It's really critical to you to discuss and understand the business sponsor's definition of success from the very beginning. This is how you will stay afloat in your lean work. And this is different from the learner outcomes during training. So if you look at these 4 levels, so this is from that 4 levels of training evaluation, you can see that level 1 and level 2 are related to effective training, so reaction and learning in the training environment. And levels 3 and level 4 are related to training effectiveness or application to the job and subsequent um, um, moving of the significant metrics that the university is trying to keep track of. So they've in doing research, they've discovered there's a strong correlation between level 1 and level 2, the evaluations, and there's a strong correlation between level 3 and level 4 uh, evaluations, but a very weak one between level 2 and level 3. So you can see that bridge that I have that picture of, and it's got 1 and 2 on one side and 3 and 4 on the other. And it's the training function that can make that connection between level 2 and level 3. So this is a kind of a new area for training and development to move into, or for maybe you as the only trainer on your campus to move into. But we have to consider how our training fits into the system, and then start working with the supervisors and managers to build that bridge between what they've learned in the classroom and how they are applying it on the job. And then some instructional design pointers, and I can tell you that we could do weeks and weeks on good instructional design. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. But make sure that you're using elaboration. This is where you're using examples and stories as part of your training. So as an example of using an example, when I'm teaching point of view thinking, I want to illustrate to the trainees the difference between facts and the stories we tell ourselves built on those facts. So I provide a list of these are the facts of my life, and then I tell a story to the group that incorporates those facts, but it's so much more than those facts. So that elaboration helps it really hit home and connects to something that they already know and are familiar with. Retrieval then is recognizing information. We want people on the job to recognize when the need for a lean process method or tool is in order, and then recall how to use it. So if we teach retrieval with spacing, like other techniques in between or spacing over time, it's going to be a lot stronger. And also, we want to try and simulate the learning environment where they're going to have to, in the learning environment, they're going to experience maybe the stress or the noise that they would experience if they were trying to do it on the job, or interruptions. So a lot of people have jobs where they're constantly interrupted, and so the learning environment might allow them this concentrated effort. Scaffolding is very important, because we want to start simple and kind of remove a lot of the more complicated elements to get the idea across, and then we start building on that. So, for example, when I'm teaching the 5S workplace organization, I might start with a simple paper activity that illustrates sort and set and order. And then we might walk over and see a supply closet that's had this 5S done to it. And then in small groups in an activity, we might have they'll have a box and a bunch of office supplies, and they might use that box and office supplies to do a 5S, and then they'll have a homework assignment. So that's an example of how we could scaffold it. Reflection, which is we're going to do next, our very next thing we'll do. This includes how we want to have them think about how they might apply what you're teaching in their workplace so that they can start imagining applying it. That's as I talk about these, if you just in your mind imagine, well, how would I do that? That is the beginning of the application process at work. We want to also incorporate social learning. So this is where we do my pair learning or small group discussions in class, or the think, pair, share, where you think individually, get together as a pair and talk about it, and then share with the larger group. We'll talk about the importance of social learning more in a moment. And then we also want to see growth in both the cognitive, which is the knowing and the skills realm, and the affective domains, because this is how we can transform people from knowing about lean in their heads to valuing it and using it in their everyday lives. And we have to work hard to because we know so much, we have to reduce cognitive load on our learners. And so we want to get rid of a lot of the nice to know things and keep just those need to know things. So, for example, a lot of lean training starts with the history of lean. From my point of view, the history of lean is nice to know, but not a need to know when I'm trying to teach lean thinking and culture and methods and tools. And so I take the lean history and I put it in an online module, and they can read it on their own time, and then write a reflection on it. So we're going to go into small groups, and you'll have 5 minutes. And in your groups, we're going to use the liberating structure called what, so what, now what. So what is something that you noticed that I've talked about so far? What's something you noticed or learned or stood out to you? So what makes this important? Why did you remember that? Why does you feel this impacts you? And now what are you going to do with this? So I want to mention that when they put you into breakout rooms, that a breakout room might show as full, and if you just wait a minute, another breakout room will open. So we're going to go into our breakout rooms now. Thank you. All right, can we bring people back now? Wonderful. Can I have my slides back in? All right, I just want to take 2 minutes now to have you just write into the comments something that you talked about or learned or that really struck a chord with you during your breakout session. So I know this is going to be a lot of information. We're not going to be able to review it all, but I just want to have the opportunity for all of you to look at it and share with each other what you found was significant or important during this first breakout session. So if you could just write a brief comment in the discussion forum. Okay. So welcome back. And we're going to just take a few minutes now to have you just write into the discussion forum the information that really struck a chord with you that during the discussion. Just going to take a couple minutes to do that. So I can see some of the big hits where the learning curve versus the forgetting curve, need to know versus nice to know, um, the training evaluation information. And of course, I'm seeing some really good ideas that you're bringing in from your own learning and knowing in the learning transfer area. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate your sharing in that way as well. Okay, thank you for your input, and I'm gonna actually try and later take this input and to do some analysis with it and share it back. So I'm not sure what form that will take, but um, just know that in some way you'll have access to this afterwards. So at this point, we're going to move on to the idea of remember, we are talking about before, during, and after those things that you can do to improve learning transfer. Now we're going to talk about what you can do during that event. So the first thing that you have to do is bring your own energy into the room. So no one is going to be more excited about what you're presenting than you are. And so if you want everybody to have a passion and be enthusiastic, then you need to push yourself. Sometimes it's more of a performance, actually, though, than it is your real feelings inside. We all have good days and bad days, but when you're up in front and talking, guiding, leading students through a learning experience, being with them on their journey, you have to be that enthusiastic encourager. Next, you need to spend time starting at the very beginning talking about what's in it for them. So call it with them. What's in it for me? Articulate why. What's the purpose of the training? Why does it matter? Why should they pay attention? So give them these reasons to care. Also, you need to be managing the agenda. So you have an agenda for the day. You have breaks scheduled. You have lunch scheduled. You're supposed to end at a certain time. And if you breach any of those kinds of agenda items, you have to know that it's going to be upsetting to your learners, and they're not going to be learning anymore because they're going to be thinking about how they had to leave at 4 on the dot to pick up their kids from an activity. And so you have completely lost their attention. Make sure that you stay on your agenda. Plan for it. Um, Also, you need to manage the training environment. It could, if it's too hot or too cold, if it is too noisy, uh, all of these kinds of things can impact the learning experience for people. And then you have to manage the learner experience journey. So this is getting them to notice a need to learn or to make a change, getting them to commit to that learning, providing them the activities and resources for them to learn and practice, incorporating follow-up and repetition and elaboration, providing opportunities for reflection and further exploration, and helping them sustain performance over time. And then creating the culture for learning. And I'll have another slide on that in a moment. I want to make a special note, though, that the learner also has a personal responsibility to try and engage with the material, to think about what the person has said, to not be multitasking on several different events, to always try and find that reason why they should be attending to what is being said. So when we're looking at the culture for learning, what we want to do is focus on developing that appreciation of differences, which increases the likelihood that any shared understanding that's developed in your training is as rich as possible. We want people to be open to learning in this case. Provide time for reflection, which allows ideas to kind of incubate or percolate and gives them opportunities for new interpretations to emerge. Allows them to merge what they're learning with what they already know, and allows the learning processes to recover. So our just physically our neurons need time to recover from any learning. And then for psychological safety, we have to help people understand that experimentation is expected and valued, that it's okay for them to make mistakes. That's isn't this lean though? I mean, it's very much of our lean values of respect for people and continuous improvement come into play when we're talking about learning transfer. Um, we want to evaluate the behavior, not the person. Like it's the process, not the person. It's the behavior, not the person. And the instructor should even model making mistakes. Might even take an opportunity to talk about mistakes that you've made so that they can see that it's okay. So now let's look at forgetting a learning curve and a forgetting curve where we've just worked to add some spacing. So the spacing to the repetition, we add repetition and spacing. The spacing could be just adding other learning elements in between, or it could be spacing over time. We can see that the learning curve grows more slowly, but still gets to the same place. But look what's happened to the forgetting curve. Now, even over longer periods of time, we're remembering up to half of the material that we were remembering before. So I early on when I first started training, I had somebody tell me that people try to rush through the material because they needed to have to cover all this information. And he said, "Yeah, you're covering it. You're putting it 6 feet down and covering it with 6 feet of dirt. Nobody's going to see it again." And so when you remove the nice to know and you focus on repetition of the need to know, then you're ensuring that that retention is going to be much higher. Let's see, and then after the learning event, um, there's a just we have to put processes and systems in place that reinforce, monitor, encourage, reward performance of behaviors on the job. So some of these might be things like providing homework assignments and practice in between learning, um, uh, recognize their efforts and recognize their achievements and accomplishments. Provide refreshers, especially on those key areas where you know they struggle. So, for example, we do a yearly refresher on how to go through Kaizen process. Also, remember that post-training support package that you developed early on with the managers. Now is the time to make sure that it's working. So this is where you're going to want to have checklists and job aids, coaching and feedback, uh, make sure that release time is happening, and that they're having opportunities to perform, and also holding them accountable for practicing. We want to maintain that no blame work environment, just like we wanted a no blame learning culture. And then we want to go back to our evaluation, collect the data, and improve our whole training system. And also, we want to see how that application is going. And then we remember it's the training, not the person. So if application isn't happening, we have to keep trying to experiment until it does. And then we also need to incorporate more social learning again. So when I'm talking about social learning, I'm talking about things like pair learning, or you ask two people to get together and talk about something, or developing a community of practice. A lot of times these things won't happen spontaneously. You have to provide the structure for them to occur. During these events, you can model examples, share them with each other, have small group discussions to help you understand what experiment to run next, or how to overcome an obstacle. These social learning opportunities lead to better learning and better work products. So also, it supports and sustains your learners as they transition from novice to practitioner to expert, and especially useful when tasks have a high degree of ambiguity, like I'm really not sure what I'm supposed to be doing here, or require transferring skills to an unfamiliar context. So you learned it in one context, but now you have to apply it in a different one. And that is what being a university facilitator of leading continuous improvement is all about. So it's especially important for the people that we're training to lead other people in improvement events to have social learning opportunities. So now look at what happens when this is an example of a normal training curve, but now we've added those refreshers and other supports in the workplace. And you can see that over time that we're hovering around 70% retention rate. So now we're doing really, really excellently as far as our learning transfer. And we can continue to experiment on this. So now we're going to go into another breakout room. So, and in the breakout room this time, what I want you to do is talk about what might you do differently now going forward. So, what experiment are you going to try? What would you expect as an outcome? What is your hypothesis here? And what obstacles or roadblocks can you identify? So, what problems do you anticipate? And we'll be in the breakout room for about 5 minutes. So, and then we'll report out to the group again. Okay, if we could start the process of bringing them back into um, the room.
4 seconds. Go back.
All right. So how are the breakout rooms? Okay, so everybody's back. Welcome back. And what we're going to do once again is go into the discussion forum and kind of put some ideas in there. What were your takeaways? What did somebody say or do that significantly impacted you? Go ahead and add that to the discussion forum. I'll give you a couple of minutes. Also, if you look in the discussion forum, I did list the 3 books that I mentioned at the beginning of the session. So if you the names of the books and the authors, so that material, that information is available to you if you want to copy and paste it out of there. Eric says hope is not a strategy. Yes, Eric, I know that. So, Bill, yes, getting people together time and time again is a challenge when they're busy. So, what can you do about that? So we can be creative. We have technology. We can reduce the overhead involved and make learning fun. How do we make it so that they want to come? Okay, so we're going to do one last discussion then. So I'm going to put you right back into your breakout rooms and give you a few minutes to talk about this very important top idea that we've learned a lot about learning transfer, and we can actually bring this into our lives right now today. So over the next few days of this conference, what can you do? What can you use from what you've learned today that you can actually start applying right now? Okay, if we could close the breakout rooms, please.
Back.
All right, welcome back. So I would love to hear your thoughts in the discussion forum. I'll give you a couple minutes about what you can do to improve your own personal takeaways from this conference. So please share in the discussion forum some of the ideas that you heard while you were in your discussion rooms. Also, somebody asked me to share the video and article that I referred to early on in the presentation, and so you can see that in the discussion forum. Yes, did you see that some of the sessions do have pre-learning assignments or questions to think on? So they're excellent, excellent options. Eric's talking about setting time on your calendar. So reserving some time on your calendar now to process some of these ideas later is a good way to set yourself up for success. All right, so at this point, I want to just kind of wrap us up a little bit. Thank you for sharing all of your learning and your feelings in our discussion forum. In this session today, we highlighted some best practices about learning transfer and understanding that there's things that we can do before the training happens, during the training, and after the training happens to really significantly impact the ability of our trainees, our learners, to go from knowing and being able to apply in the classroom to actually being able to do it at the appropriate time on the job. We also shared ideas, some experiments that we might try, and designed plans for ourselves to start using what we've learned today. So at this point, I have a few minutes where can take some questions, or at least attempt to. Let's see, my slide's not advancing. Okay, so seems to have lost my slides, but at this point, want to know what questions or concerns you might have, what about this might be difficult for you to do, or what about this just doesn't work for you. So let's see, wow, lots coming in.
Ruth, if I could come in here, can you hear me?
Yes.
So a couple of questions were happening through the session. So Jonathan Fischbach said much earlier on, how far in advance should training be delivered?
So of course, the optimum case is that the training gets delivered when they're going to have to use it. So having the training well in advance of being able to actually apply it is going to give you that really steep forgetting curve because there's no opportunity to use it. So
is there an optimum time for that?
So the optimum time would be to have the system in place and getting the training concurrently.
So at the same time, so they go straight from learning
to doing.
To doing.
Yes.
Okay.
And if that's not the case, then you have to figure out how to set up refreshers,
Yeah.
right? So they had the training. What are some of the key elements of that training, and how can you refresh people's memories? What job aids can you provide? What checklists can you go through?
Okay. And Ravneet Kaur follows up on that. So what's the ideal spacing period in between sessions? So on the spaced training, is there time, or does it depend on what the task is?
The ideal, I mean, the theoretical ideal for spacing is the spacing that they would encounter on the job, but that's not always practical. And so you would maybe want to, if it's something that only happens once a year, you would probably want to do some space training a couple of times in between the training and when they have to implement it.
So
When
this
you're
goes back to your slide about mirroring the environment in real life, in the working sort of example of that. So you do the training, make the training mirror real life as much as possible.
But any spacing that you can give is going to be better. So anything. So let's say you have 4 hours and you're going to teach A, B, and C. So if you, instead of teaching A, B, 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 C, 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 you taught A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C, their remembering is going to be higher.
Okay.
So even if you can't space it out over time hugely, and even a little bit.
Excellent. Now we do have, just while you're asking questions, there's been a flag up, if I can just get back to it. Nicole Dunwatt says, late message, I'm sure, but we have delivered lean training and we're going to do a training session at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So just look out for that on the list of workshops that are available, a little coming up.
Awesome.
And Sven Arachildness, an interesting comment talking about learning circles are really useful to create a learning community. Is that something you've had experience with, Ruth, the impact of learning circles? I suppose that leads on to the question about democratizing knowledge. Should it be the training be top down, or should the group be deciding what they want to learn?
So right, is it the sage on the stage or the guide on the side? And I'm a big advocate for the guide on the side. So in a classroom, when you're teaching adult learners, there shouldn't not be a hierarchy. You should keep yourself at their level. And I haven't experienced learning circles directly, but we do a lot of small group learning, and we also have a community of practice that we operate. So
great. I'm looking at the time now. We've got a couple of minutes left before we need to be out the session. But if you could give a very quick answer to Michelle Fordham, who has said, how is it more valuable to train specific teams in order to allow for realistic application or learning when they leave? So how critical to success is the type of group that you're training?
I think what is important is if you have limited time for training, then the more you can train them in the context of how they'll have to apply it, the better off you are. So that there's this concept of FAR learning. And if I'm training you in one context, if you're learning lean in manufacturing and you have to apply it in higher ed, that's a FAR context. And that is much more difficult. It's a much higher barrier to overcome. So if you have the opportunity to train somebody on a problem that they're trying to solve for their work environment, at the same time that you're training them, you might want to throw in examples of other ways they can use it, so that when they're done being trained on this specific problem, they can actually transfer that learning to some other spaces.
Great. Okay, if I could have just a minute or so more time to do a wrap up, that would be grand. As you can see from the clock, that sadly brings us to the end of what has been an absolutely fascinating session. On behalf of everyone here, I'd like to offer our profound thanks to the wonderful Dr. Ruth Archer, and please do post any thanks or comments in the discussion forum. Well, that is a hard act to follow, but don't forget, we've now got 5 more fabulous workshops coming up after a short break. We've got San Diego's Aaron Crickard on countering committee culture. Michigan and the Lean HE Global Steering Group's Krista Schulte on measuring what matters, UCSD's Praki Rahija on forging your path through dense process jungles, Lean coaching consultant Nancy Kress's workshop, train student employees rapidly with Lean, and Professor Eric Olson and adjunct instructor Wes Love on using Lean to teach Lean, the Cal Poly ITP 303 management system. If you haven't already made your selection, head over to the workshops and have a look at more details there. Some housekeeping picked up from this morning. Please make sure you are in Zoom version 5.8.1 to get the best result out of this. Please join from a stable network. Ensure you're not blocked by a firewall or proxy code. And please do not click launch meeting. Wait for the pop-up password to appear, the prompt to appear. If you're having any major problems, you might need to delete and reinstall your app, or you can always get in touch with live support and the fabulous tech team will help you from there. Don't forget, you can also access the meeting hub to chat with other delegates, the wellbeing hub for some relaxation videos, and also to explore the presenter profile and TED style talks. But remember to use the back to timeline rather than the back browser arrow unless you want to be kicked off. Meantime, enjoy this just short of 20-minute break and then your chosen workshop for the next hour and then another 20-minute break. So I will see you back here in 1 hour, 40 minutes for Steve Yorkstone and Dr. Eva Malone's TED style talk on their experience with a racy tool variant. And then, of course, the brilliant Lean HE quiz. Also, don't forget that you'll need to access the Kahoot.it app on your phone for the quiz. So you can either download the app during the break or go via a web link. So Kahoot.it. That's it from me. Enjoy your break. Bye for now.